What if Jesus of Nazareth and the Buddha weren't performing miracles through like divine magic, but because they had actually memorized a 64-part mathematical equation?
I mean, it is a radical reframing of history, to say the least.
Right.
Yeah, it takes everything we think of as supernatural and just it reduces it to a very specific structural science.
That's wild. Welcome to this custom deep dive, by the way. Today, we are opening up a source text that is, frankly, incredibly ambitious.
Oh, absolutely.
It claims to be nothing less than the literal step-by-step instruction manual for the creation of the universe.
Which is quite the claim.
Yeah, and we're not just talking about a scientific timeline of the Big Bang here. We are exploring this dense philosophical text that attempts to map out exactly how absolute nothingness transformed into the reality that you and I are experiencing right now. So our mission today is to act as your guides through this cosmic blueprint. We're going to explore this text as a fascinating mental model, taking these massive, sometimes overwhelming metaphysical claims and just breaking them down into digestible mechanisms.
And this mental model is sprawling. I mean, what is so fascinating about this source text is how it attempts to unify ancient Chinese philosophical concepts, specifically Wuji and Taiji, with the origins of what it calls the greatest creator.
Yeah, it's a huge synthesis.
It really is. It weaves together major historical and religious figures, placing Lao Tzu, the Buddha, and Jesus inside one grand cosmic mathematical equation. Basically, it presents an analytical framework for reality itself.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can have a universe, before we can even have a single atom, a drop of water, or even a concept of time,
Yeah.
we have to start at absolute zero.
Right, the absolute beginning.
Exactly. The architecture of this theory begins with a concept called Wuji. What exactly is the text describing when it talks about Wuji?
So, according to the text, we are looking at a state that is simultaneously nothing and everything.
Uh-huh.
The source defines Wuji as pure chaos. But we have to be careful here because it's not chaos like, a messy room or a turbulent ocean.
Right, it's not physical yet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is chaos without firmness and yet without emptiness.
Yeah.
It is simply intangible energy moving irregularly without any pattern or purpose whatsoever.
Okay, I have to stop you there because nothing and everything sounds like one of those philosophical paradoxes that writers use when they don't actually have an answer.
Right.
Like it feels like a bit of a cop-out to just say, oh, it's everything and nothing. How does this text actually justify that contradiction?
Well, it's a totally fair critique.
Yeah.
And the text actually tries to ground this paradox using a very specific visual analogy.
Yeah.
It asks you to picture a perfectly clear sky. When you look up at a cloudless blue sky, there is nothing there, right? It appears completely empty to the naked eye. But then, suddenly, the temperature shifts, the pressure drops, clouds roll in, lightning strikes, and thunder crashes. Suddenly, everything is there.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Okay.
The potential for the storm, the moisture, the electrical charge, it was always present in that sky.
It just wasn't visible.
Exactly. It was just in a state of intangible energy, moving irregularly until the conditions suddenly changed.
That makes a lot more sense. So to build on that, it's almost like standing in a giant, endless room full of invisible static electricity.
That's a great way to think about it.
You can't see it, you can't touch it, but the raw material for a massive electrical shock is just floating all around you.
Yes, exactly.
But that brings up a massive question of causality. How does random floating static electricity suddenly decide to organize itself into a universe? Like, does the void just wake up one day and make a choice?
Not consciously, no. The text is very specific about the mechanics of this first transition.
Okay.
It says that by pure blind chance, this irregular, chaotic movement of intangible energy happens to form a specific order.
By accident.
Just pure chance. It forms a specific symbol or order at a single arbitrary point in the void.
So it's just a totally random alignment of the static.
Exactly. But the moment that random alignment happens, the entire expanse of Wuji reacts to it. All that intangible energy forms a massive potential power arrow centering right on that single random point.
Like a magnet turning on.
Yeah, and the text describes this resulting formation as a tornado. And this gathered tornado of energy is what the source calls Taiji.
The scale the text uses to describe this is genuinely terrifying.
Oh, it's massive.
Yeah, it describes this Taiji state as an extremely large energy cluster. It says it's like a locked reservoir containing, and this is a direct quote, billions of Pacific Oceans.
It's hard to even wrap your head around that.
Just try to picture the sheer weight. You know, the unbelievable pressure of a billion Pacific Oceans trapped behind a single unmoving dam.
And what's fascinating here is a major nuance the text points out regarding that exact pressure. This tornado isn't actually spinning yet.
Wait, a tornado that has zero rotation?
Right. It has absolutely zero kinetic energy. It is pure, latent potential energy.
Oh, wow.
It is a posture, right? A massive momentum just waiting to happen. And this is where the text makes a massive theological leap.
What does it claim?
It states that this Taiji state, this dormant reservoir of infinite potential energy, is the greatest creator.
Wait, really? The energy itself is the creator?
Yes. It argues that this latent state of gathered energy is what common sense refers to as God.
So if we follow the text's logic, Wuji is the chaotic, static void, and Taiji is the gathered, unified potential of that void.
Yes, and the text claims that misunderstanding the mechanics of this exact transition is the root of a lot of historical and philosophical confusion.
Interesting. Like what?
For instance, it argues that Lao Tzu, when he was writing the Tao Te Ching, called this pre-universe state Tao. But the text claims Lao Tzu made a structural mistake.
A mistake in the math.
Yeah, he mixed up the nature of the universe with the, quote, psychic energy of the creator.
What does it mean by psychic energy in this context?
In the architecture of this text, Taiji isn't just an empty law of physics. It is the dormant mind, or the psychic blueprint of the creator.
Ah, I see.
The source makes a bold claim here. It says that understanding the formless void of Wuji unlocks the teachings of the Buddha and Buddhism, while understanding the gathered potential of Taiji unlocks Tao and Taoism.
Okay, but having a locked reservoir of a billion Pacific Oceans doesn't actually give us a universe.
No, it doesn't.
It's entirely useless if the dam never breaks, right? If Taiji is just a dormant tornado, like a paper tiger, as the text literally calls it, what actually triggers the dam to break?
Right. How do we get from a frozen posture to reality?
Yeah. How do we get to planets and plants and people?
So the turning on of the universe is the transition from Taiji to what the text calls the two polarities.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting.
Exactly. This is the exact moment intangible energy suddenly becomes tangible. The text uses the sun as an example to explain this.
How so?
It compares it to an intangible energy cluster suddenly taking a tangible, visible, burning form.
Right, the birth of opposites. None and existence form a unity.
Yes.
And from that, we get everything we recognize as reality. Yin and yang, positive and negative, left and right, rich and poor, beauty and ugly, life and death.
That's right. The duality of everything.
But you still haven't answered the causality question. What forces the dormant paper tiger to actually split into these opposites?
Well, it comes down to a very specific mechanism of pressure and heat. Remember, all that energy gathered at a single random point.
Yeah, the billion oceans.
Right. The text explains that all this mammoth energy rushes toward the center. The sheer, unfathomable pressure causes the center point to literally change its nature.
So it mutates into its own weight.
Exactly. The text compares it to water evaporating when it's heated to a certain degree.
Okay.
It ceases to be just raw energy and becomes a structure. It is alienated from its original form. And once this structure is perfected by the heat and pressure, consciousness is born.
Okay, I have to push back hard on that because that is a staggering leap.
It's definitely a big jump.
I understand how pressure changes coal into a diamond, or, how heat turns water into steam. That's just physics. But how does physical pressure create consciousness?
It's a tough concept to grasp at first.
Yeah, that is a massive leap from inanimate physics to biology and awareness. How does the text possibly justify that?
It actually bridges that gap using biology. The text explicitly likens this cosmic process to a fertilized egg in a uterus.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so a newly fertilized egg doesn't start with human consciousness, right?
Right, it's just cells.
Exactly. But as it sits in the uterus, absorbing energy, its physical structure begins to perfect and improve. It builds pathways, it builds a brain.
Until eventually, a conscious human mind emerges from that absorbed energy.
Exactly. In the same way, the text argues that the cosmic center point absorbs infinite energy until its structure reaches a perfection that inevitably yields consciousness.
Wow.
And this consciousness is the greatest creator actually starting the observable universe.
The visceral bodily analogies the text uses to explain what happens next are actually really striking.
They are very relatable.
Yeah. Once this consciousness is born at the center of the universe, all the remaining energy begins to move around it effortlessly. Like, it's not a struggle.
No, it's automatic.
The text says it's exactly like your own body responding to your mind's will. Think about it. When you want to look at the sky, you don't have to consciously tell your neck muscles to contract.
Right, your head just lifts.
Yeah. When your consciousness decides it needs to urinate, the bladder door just opens. When you desire intimacy, your body physically responds without you having to manually direct your blood flow.
The biological structure just implicitly obeys the consciousness.
Exactly.
And that automatic, effortless obedience is the birth of our observable reality.
So the universe just functions like a giant body.
Yes. The Creator's consciousness acts, and the two polarities appear in response. Celestial bodies form. Infinite space opens up. Time begins. Everything enters the inevitable cycle of life and death, just as naturally as a body breathing.
So we have a universe split into opposites: up, down, hot, cold, existence, non-existence. But, duality alone doesn't explain the complexity of a human life.
No, it's too simple.
Right, or the intricate growth of a forest. How do simple opposites generate the wildly complex reality we live in?
Well, they multiply. Once time, space, and duality exist, reality begins to mathematically expand. The two polarities immediately spawn the four directions.
Which actually makes logical sense. If you have a line with two ends, existence and non-existence, you cross it with another line, and suddenly you have a grid.
Exactly. South, east, and west.
Okay.
From a developmental perspective, you get the four stages of existence: life, growth, decline, and death. From a mathematical perspective, you get the four quadrants of a standard function graph.
But a 2D grid still isn't enough to hold reality.
Right, so the four quickly becomes 8.
And the text calls these the 8 trigrams.
Yeah.
And to visualize this for you listening, a trigram is literally a symbol made of a stack of 3 lines.
Yeah, it's a very ancient symbol.
Some of the lines are solid, representing yang, and some are broken in the middle, representing yin. It looks almost like an ancient barcode.
That's a perfect visual for it.
And mathematically, if you have 3 slots and 2 types of lines, there are exactly 8 possible combinations.
Right. The text names these 8 ancient trigrams: Qian, Dui, Liz, Zhen, Sun, Kan, Zhen, and Kun.
Okay.
They represent the expansion of the compass: northeast, southeast, northwest, southwest.
But why does this matter? Like, we've built a cosmic 8-point compass. How does that actually explain the complexity of reality?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the text is arguing that these aren't just arbitrary points on a map used for navigation.
What are they then?
They are literal active fields of probability. They are distinct zones of energy that mathematically dictate the flow of life, chance, and development.
The text actually gives some incredibly specific, everyday examples of this mechanism in action.
Yes, it gets very practical.
It says that a person's health, or even their luck, might literally change based on their physical alignment with these trigrams.
Exactly.
It argues that you could be failing miserably in the East, like every business you start collapses, every relationship fails, but if you physically move your life to the West, suddenly everything goes perfectly.
It's all about spatial alignment.
Yeah, the text says the ugly duckling becomes a white swan simply by changing spatial directions. It even applies this to nature, stating that a single blade of grass will have a totally different growth model and blossoming time depending on which spatial quadrant it is planted in.
It's a total paradigm shift.
Think about what this implies for you, listening right now. It completely challenges our modern notion of meritocracy and free will.
It really does.
If we accept the text's premise here, it frames the concept of feeling stuck in a rut, not just as a psychological state or a lack of hard work, but as a literal spatial misalignment with the universe's energies.
Right. That promotion you didn't get might not be because your resume was weak.
It might literally be because you're sitting in the wrong spatial quadrant of probability.
It implies that reality is an active grid of varying energies, and your success depends entirely on how you navigate that grid.
Wow.
But, the 8 trigrams are just the foundational layer. The blueprint reaches its ultimate complexity when you take those 8 trigrams and combine them with each other.
Oh, so they multiply again.
Exactly. 8 times 8 gives us the 64 trigrams.
If the 8 trigrams are a compass, the 64 trigrams are like the periodic table of elements for events and luck.
That is a great way to frame it. The text claims that the permutation and combination of these 64 trigrams correspond to the 64 fundamental factors of the universe.
Meaning everything is covered by them.
Every single event, The birth and death of all things, all the limitless mysteries, every shift in weather, and every movement in human history is dictated by these 64 factors.
So what does this all mean for humanity? If this 64-factor math equation is running the physics of the universe behind the scenes, is it possible for a human mind to actually learn it?
Well, the text is very clear that because these 64 factors contain the total mechanics of the universe, they're generally hidden from common people.
That makes sense.
But it provides a fascinating and highly specific hierarchy of historical masters who attempted to decode this cosmic math.
And as we go through this hierarchy, we are exploring this strictly as the theoretical framework the text presents. Because, well, it makes some incredibly bold claims about major historical and religious figures.
It absolutely does. It starts by stating that King Wenezhou, who is a massively revered historical figure in Chinese history, often associated with the I Ching, didn't actually know all of the factors.
Okay.
It claims the most achieved Taoist masters in China only managed to decode a few of them.
And then it moves to the major founders of global religions.
Yes. The text claims that Sakyamuni the Buddha managed to master about half of these 64 factors.
Half of them, wow.
And it claims that Jesus of Nazareth knew a few more factors than the Buddha did.
This is where the text entirely reframes the concept of the supernatural.
Oh, completely.
It says we often hear the ancient phrase, heaven's secrets cannot be disclosed. Well, according to this blueprint, the heaven secrets aren't mystical decrees from a bearded man in the sky.
Right.
They are entirely contained within the math of the 64 trigrams.
Yeah.
Every single unimaginable event, every miracle recorded in human history is simply the combination of two or more of these cosmic factors.
It completely demystifies miracles by turning them into chemistry. The text's claim is that Jesus' power to heal or alter reality didn't come from divine magic. It came from his mastery of the formula.
He just knew the math.
He simply possessed the recipe for these specific probability factors.
So if you know how to mix the right esoteric compounds, you get a miraculous reaction. It's basically treating reality like an open source code, and these figures were just the most successful hackers.
Precisely. And the text anchors this entire architectural framework with a profound, almost dizzying closing thought.
What's its thought?
It summarizes what happens when someone fully masters these 64 trigrams by stating, no coming, no going, the time-space ends, and origin shows up.
The time-space ends and origin shows up.
Yeah.
If we break that down, it implies that the grid of reality, the east, the west, the up, the down, the flow of time, is ultimately just an illusion generated by the factors.
Exactly.
And if you actually master the full mathematical formula, the illusion collapses. The 64 trigrams dissolve back into the 8 dissolve back into the two polarities, the polarities merge back into the tornado of Taiji.
And you are left staring right back at the formless static of Wuji. You return to the absolute source.
This has been a massive journey we've taken you on today.
Truly.
We started in the absolute zero-point static void of Wuji. We watched that invisible energy randomly align into the terrifying locked potential of Taiji, a billion Pacific Oceans waiting behind a dam.
The paper tiger.
Right. We debated the violent birth of a cosmic consciousness that shattered that potential under immense pressure, splitting reality into the two polarities of existence and non-existence.
And we rode that wave of mathematical multiplication all the way out.
Yes. To the four directions, the barcode-like 8 trigrams, and finally the 64 cosmic factors that act as the periodic table of reality, mathematically dictating everything from the growth of a blade of grass to the miracles of historical figures.
And what makes this source text so valuable to engage with, regardless of your personal beliefs, is the unifying framework it provides.
Absolutely.
It suggests that these ancient philosophies and global religions aren't actually competing, contradictory narratives. Instead, it frames them as different, brilliant individuals throughout history, all trying to solve the exact same massive 64-factor cosmic math problem.
They were all just observing and manipulating the same foundational physics of the greatest creator.
Exactly.
Which leaves you with a lingering, almost dangerous question to mull over as you go about your day.
Oh, I like where this is going.
If historical figures like the Buddha and Jesus achieved such a massive world-altering impact by mastering only half, or slightly more than half, of these 64 cosmic factors, what would happen if humanity eventually decoded the entire formula?
That's the ultimate question.
Is the human mind even biologically capable of holding all 64 factors of reality at once? Or, as the text hints, Would knowing the full unvarnished equation instantly dissolve the illusion of time and space, collapsing our reality all the way back into the formless, chaotic void of Wuji?
That makes you wonder.
Maybe there's very good reason the instruction manual for the universe didn't come fully assembled in the box. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.